So hope everyone can listen to me and I am visible to everyone. Others also need to give response. Nanya, Sonia, Sushma. Good evening everyone. So audio and video both is clear to you? Okay, very good. So we'll be starting with a new subject today, dental materials. Okay. We're finished with radiology. So starting with the new subject, dental materials. Okay. So first we'll be dealing with properties of dental materials, basic properties, that how the dental materials behave. Okay. So first we'll be dealing with the properties. So many properties of the respiratory materials, other dental materials depends upon these basic properties of the materials. So it's important to understand these basic properties of materials. So when I start with the basic properties, first we'll start with the bonds. Most of the compounds in the nature exist in the form of 2-3 combinations. Like it's a compound, it's never an atom, single atom, which never exists there. Okay. Just a minute, give me 2 minutes. We'll start in 2 minutes, okay? Need to be genuine. It's a genuine exam. You have to believe that every exam is a genuine exam, okay? Then you will be able to prepare for it. So every exam is a genuine exam, okay? I mean, seats, ma'am. Yeah, definitely. But no, I don't think they are fixed. I don't think, at least I believe this. And you also have to believe this, okay? Then only you can give exam with full heart and full, josh. So how is radiology for everyone? Everyone is thorough with radiology? Finished with that subject? I'm asking others, Kamal, Ananya, Sonia. Okay. Others? Not completely. Why? Try to complete the subject with the classes only. should we start national boards now itself? Yes, you can. Why not? You can find time, at least you can arrange your time. Like if you are giving 10 hours, you can always give 1 hour in between to the national boards. I'm not saying that stick only to the national boards. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक बार national board start किया and you're doing only national boards, but you can keep time for it. Okay, from 10 hours, okay, I'm giving 1 hour to national boards, I'm giving 2 hours to national boards, so that you shouldn't feel that your subject is lagging and you're not doing other things or other subjects or other books. But yeah, you can do that. Because national board, all questions are very conceptual. It helps in clearing your concepts. Should we read every subject in depth? Good question. Okay, you should actually read everything in depth. Definitely, actually, your concept should be clear. That is important. I don't know what do you mean by depth, but yeah, if your concept is clear, any question related to that you can answer. No, just cannot go to the MCQ book and read the MCQs. Even if you read it from 2, 3, 4 books, it will not be sufficient. If you know the concept, then there's no need to even, if you do 2, 3, 5 any books, that's fine. But yeah, knowing concepts is important. And if you mean by subject in depth means clearing of concepts, yeah, then you should read in depth, right? Okay, I think we shall start with the class now. So I was talking about the properties of dental materials. Dental materials have so many basic properties actually which further affect their behavior in the clinical situations. When you use that behavior, how that material responds, what's the behavior in the mouth, what are the clinical properties of that material in oral cavity. These are the basic properties which affect the clinical handling and clinical properties of the, or you can say lab properties of the dental material. So that's why we are dealing with these properties. So first are the bonds. Bonds are primary bonds as well as secondary bonds. Under the primary bonds come the ionic bond. Okay. So ionic bond. What do you mean by ionic bond is, let's see the example of sodium chloride. Atom is stable when there are 8 electrons in its outer shell, right? So if there are 8 electrons in its outer shell, it can be stable only in that condition. Okay. Good evening, Rashmi, if I remember right. Okay. So sodium has 1 electron in its outer shell. So it is not stable. It can be stable if it loses this 1 electron. On the other side, if you see the chloride, it has 7 electrons in its outer shell. Okay. So it can be stable if it gains 1 electron. For sodium, it's easy to lose 1 electron, and for chlorine atom, it's easy to gain 1 electron. So sodium will lose this electron and it will be gained by chlorine. So sodium will become sodium ion, Na positive, and chlorine will become chloride ion, that is Cl negative. So one is positively charged ion now, second is negatively charged ion. So it will attract each other. So sodium chloride forms. So this type of bond is known as ionic bond. Okay. Is it clear to everyone? Sonia, Kamal, Ananya, everyone, Rashmi? Okay. You can stop me anywhere, wherever it's not clear. Okay. So that is ionic bond. Now coming to the second type of the primary bond is the covalent bond. I have already told that any atom is stable only if in this outer shell there are 8 electrons. If you see 2 chlorine atoms, both have 7 electrons in its outer shell. We know this, right? So both are not ready to give electron because both wants 1 more electron to be 8. Okay. So what these 2 chlorine atoms should do? they can share one. One is contributed by this atom, one will be contributed by this atom, and they can share one electron, and these are the shared electrons. So if you count like this, it is 8 for this atom, and count like this, it is 8 for this atom. So sharing of electrons to complete the 8 number of electrons in the outermost shell forms the covalent bond. As these two atoms are sharing it, it's very difficult to separate these two atoms. So that's why covalent bonds are very strong primary bonds. Okay, these are very, very strong primary bonds. Now coming to the next type of primary bond is the metallic bond. This kind of bond usually exists in metals. That's why name is metallic bond. In metals, the electrons, if you see their group of atoms of metal, it's not usually, it doesn't reside usually surrounding that one central ion. Mostly what is there, central positive ions there, and there will be electron cloud around. So electrons, outermost electrons will be free around, and it will be surrounding the ions. Okay, so as such, if you see the structure of a metal, there will be positive ions, central part of the atom around this. Outer electrons will be freely movable around, forming a cloud of electrons around. So this kind of bond which exists between this cloud of electrons and the central positive ions attracting each other is a metallic bond. Okay, so hope everyone clear what is Sushma part. No slide. Okay, just a minute. Sushma, can you see the slide now? Kamal, I'll repeat the metallic bond. Okay, Sushma, fine. So what is metallic bond? In metals, metals mean silver, gold, platinum, these are the metals. In metals, actually atom doesn't exist with the central positive part and the around there's the electrons. Usually when there's a combination group of atoms, this will be central positive charges and the outer electrons will be freely moving here and there. So if you see the structure, it will not be single atom defined like this, single atom defined like this. Just a minute, okay. So it will not be single atom defined like this, okay. So usually what will happen, central ion and so many electrons around, electrons of this atom, this atom, this atom, all around forming a cloud, a group of there. So if you see the picture will be like so many positive ion central and there will be so many electrons surrounding it like a cloud. So that is the metallic ion, okay, because of all this cloud will be getting attracted towards all the positive ions. So that is metallic bond. Kamal, is it clear to you? Okay. So if you see so many free electrons are there in this electron cloud, it gives a very good properties to the metals. Okay. What kind of the electrons are not floating, it's like a group surrounding these ions. Definitely because of the central charges it is attracted towards it. So you can say, yeah, it's a group. In this cloud it is definitely a floating one, you can say. Okay, but it's not floating anywhere around here, there. In this group it is definitely can move here to there. Okay. So these free electrons can give very good properties to the metals. If you remember the properties of the metals, the metals are very good conductor of electricity. Or know that because of these free electrons, it's a very good conductor of electricity. Metals are malleable, means you can beat it. Yeah, definitely positive charge is equal to negative, definitely, because these electrons are not from outside somewhere. These are just contributed by these atoms only. Only thing, it is not sticking to one atom at one position. Its position is not fixed at one point. That is definitely these are same. The positive charges are equal to the negative charges. They are just free to move here and there. That's it. Okay. So because of this, it can be drawn into sheets, that is malleability and ductility because of this kind of structure. And it's a good conductor of heat and electricity because of these kind of metallic bonds. Okay. Then coming to the secondary bonds. Secondary bonds are not as strong as the primary bonds, but these are very important bonds. The first example is the hydrogen bond. Okay. So what do you mean by hydrogen bond? If you remember water, okay, in water it is HOH. HOH is the H2O we call it, or HOH, right? H2O, if you remember, this is H, here is O, and here is H again, right? So this is the structure of water. Okay. So because of the different sizes of the atom, oxygen is bigger, H is small. There is a polarity on this molecule. This molecule is polar. Okay. That's why it slightly attracts the next molecule of water, and there will be hydrogen bonding between it. Okay. So that is known as hydrogen bonding. You see the structure because of the disparity in the sizes of atom, oxygen and hydrogen. This is little more negatively charged oxygen pole, and hydrogen pole is little positive charge. Okay, because of this polarity of this molecule, this attracts other adjacent molecule. So hydrogen bond exists between different water molecules. So that is hydrogen bonding. Okay, and this angle is 107. Okay, for water. So coming to the next secondary bonds is the van der Waals forces. Van der Waals forces are again a very weak kind of forces, but very important one. In the van der Waals forces, what happens? All molecules, although they are not ions, like positive or negative frank charges are not there, but momentarily sometimes they acquire the charges. Because of this momentarily presence of charges, molecules attract each other, or these atoms attract each other. Okay. For example, is a static electricity. Okay? If you rub any rod or something or a comb in the hair in winter especially, the comb will attract the hair. Something called a scale on hair. Okay, fine, scale on hair or a comb on hair. Okay, stick the paper bits also. So that is because of that. Because of the momentary rubbing, the molecules will momentarily charge, and because of that it attracts each other. But that is very momentarily. Okay. So what's the significance of this if it's very momentarily? Because of this momentarily presence of charges, at least these molecules or atoms come closer to each other. Once it is closer, then other reactions, other kinds of bonds can also happen. Okay, it can be covalent bond, but initially it should come closer. So okay, so other kind of reaction or interactions between atoms and molecules can occur afterwards, but initial coming closer quality is given by van der Waals forces. So what is van der Waals forces? In one line, molecules or atoms acquire momentarily charges, and because of that momentarily charges, these are attracted to each other, which may lead to some other kind of interaction or reaction afterwards depending upon its properties. Okay. So hope this is clear to everyone. Bonds are clear to everyone, I hope. Rashmi, Kamal, Sushma, Sayyad, Saili. Clear? So, shall I move ahead? Next is adhesion and cohesion. Sorry. I want this slide, okay. adhesion and cohesion. So next is adhesion and cohesion. What is adhesion? When the two substances are brought into close contact, molecules adhere with each other. Okay, molecules attract each other and adheres with each other. Okay, so when this kind of attraction and adherence is between unlike molecules, it is adhesion, and when it is between same kind of molecules, it is cohesion. Yeah. Adhesion when they are unlike molecules, cohesion when these are between two like molecules. Clear? Yeah, unlike molecules adhesion, like molecules cohesion. When we place denture, upper denture, there is a thin film of saliva between palate and the denture. That thin film of saliva is responsible for that adherence. So one side is saliva, other side is denture. So that is adhesion. Okay. Adhesion is unlike molecules, cohesion is like molecules. Okay. Two surfaces coming in contact and attracting each other and getting adhered to each other. When these are unlike, then it is adhesion. When these are like, it is cohesion. Should be very clear about this. Okay. So material of film used to cause adhesion is known as adhesive. Okay. A layer or a film which is needed is adhesive. For example, if this is one substance and we put a layer of some material on it which helps in adhesion, that is known as adhesive. Okay. Suppose this is one material A. Okay. On this we put a layer of some material which helps in adhesion with some other block, other material. This central material which helps in adhesion is known as adhesive, and this on which it is applied is adherent. Okay. So material on which it is applied is adherent, and this center layer is adhesive. Okay. So if you remember, between palate and denture, saliva layer is adhesive. Okay. If I give an example, between palate and upper denture, a layer of saliva acts as adhesive. Clear? So is it clear to everyone? Shall I move ahead? Okay. Then coming to surface energy. When I talk about surface energy, from where comes this surface energy actually? So just try to understand the concept. This is the one diagram here. Okay. In which it's a piece of a material or matter where there are so many atoms are there or molecules are there. Okay. If this is the innermost atom, this part what is shown is an atom or molecule which is present very much inside of that matter. So which is present in the center of that or inside, it will be attracted by all the atoms equally. Kamal, no audio. Okay, Kamal, you refresh once. Kamal, is it okay? Kamal, is it okay with you? Okay, fine. Okay. So we were talking about surface energy. The atom or molecule which is present inside, not on the surface, inside here, will be attracted from equal sides by other molecules. Clear? So its forces or its energy is balanced there. But if you see these molecules which are present on the surface of a matter, these are only getting attracted from one side because and their surface is free. There are no molecules on the surface to attract them. That's why the energy is high on the surface. So this energy is known as surface energy. Okay. So Saili, Syed, Sushma, is it clear to everyone what is surface energy? Okay. Fine. Okay. So what is surface tension now? Increase in energy per unit area. So what example can be given for surface tension is if there is one balloon and if you blow that balloon, so what will be there? There is increase in area. As there is an increase in area, there is increase in surface energy also, because the surface is increased. Clear? When we blow a balloon, there will be increase in area. That is clear? As there is increase in surface area, definitely surface energy is also increased. That increase in energy per unit area is surface tension. Definitely balloon, that is when it is stretched and you blow the balloon, it is in tension. It is in, that is surface tension. Okay. So that increase in energy per unit area is surface tension. Then a soap film contracts and drop of liquid. So how this surface, one more thing in this universe, every matter, everything tries to be at the lowest level of energy. Okay. Every matter in this universe try to lose energy and try to be at the lowest level of energy. So how it is possible? It's possible only in the sphere form. Okay, if the same volume, there is a rhomboid form, there is a cuboidal form, there is a sphere form. Only in the sphere form, the surface area is less. When the surface area is less, surface energy is less. Okay. So that's why each and every liquid tends to acquire the spherical shape. Okay. And how much that tendency, that depends upon the surface energy. For example, water also tends to be in the droplet, but mercury has much more tendency to be in spherical drops, because surface energy of mercury is much more than surface energy of water. Okay, that's why it tends to be in the spherical forms. The surface atom of solid tends to form bonds. Okay, so how? So liquid can do one thing. Liquid can attain spherical form and can decrease its energy. But how the solids can decrease its energy? The solids can decrease its energy by chemisorption. Okay, so if there is a solid surface, it cannot change its shape to a spherical form. So how this surface energy will be decreased? So solid surfaces tends to attract and accumulate other small particles on it. Try to attract these small particles on it, which tend to lose that energy. And that initial attraction can be by van der Waals forces. So this attraction can be by van der Waals forces, or if the primary bonds are involved, then this is known as chemisorption. So what is chemisorption? When in this attraction between solid surface and other particles, primary bonds are involved. This attraction is by primary bonds. This interaction is, then only it is known as chemisorption. So this interaction can be by van der Waals forces or by chemisorption. Chemisorption means interaction by primary bonds. Okay. Then coming to the next topic, that is wettability. Okay. So what is wettability? If you put a drop of water on different things, like on a plastic, on a glass, it has different behaviors, right? It may not wet the surface or it may wet the surface. The better example is mercury. If you put a drop of mercury on a glass slab, it will not form a layer on it. It will get rolled out. Okay. And if you put a drop of water, it will spread in a better way. So why few liquids spread on a surface and why tend to form a spherical drops? Okay. So this is something related to property known as wettability. So what is wettability? If between a solid and a liquid surface, this is the angle between that solid and surface. So whatever sphere is formed, if you draw a tangent to that, what is this angle is formed? If it is more, then wetting is poor. As this angle is decreasing between this liquid and solid surface, the wettability it is spreading out. So wettability is improving. At 0 degree of its angle, it's completely wetting the surface. So if you talk about from the MCQ point of view, here wettability is best when the angle between solid and liquid surface is 0 degrees. Okay, best wettability is at 0 degrees. it decreases with increase in angle. If this angle is more, wettability is poor. Clear? So coming to the next part, stress. I hope till here everything is clear to you. Saili, Syed, Sushma, Rashmi, Kamal, everyone. Yes, Rashmi, when my 0 degree means complete wetting, is good wetting. As this angle increases, wettability decreases. Okay? Fine. So I'll continue with the next important property, that is stress. Stress is the force per unit area. So what is force per unit area? Suppose this is one box. If I press it from top, from here, okay, that is the force I am putting on it. Okay, that's the force I am putting on it. Force per unit area is pressure. So when I am putting force on it, there must be something in reaction to that happening inside this material. Okay, then I am applying that force. In reaction to that, something will happen in this material. That reaction is stress. Okay, that reaction is stress. So again, it is force per unit area, but this is internal reaction to external force. So this is not force. So be very much clear about this. What I am saying is, this is internal reaction to that external force. It is not force. Force per unit area is pressure, and this is what is response to that force is stress. Okay, definitely it will be same. So it's again unit is same, that is force per unit area. So when I am applying force like this, then stress can be of different types, like tensional, compressional, shear. How it can be different types. After applying force, if the stress is in opposite direction, this one direction is this, other direction is this, but it is in same line. Okay, same line. See, it is in same line. Sonia, wetting property is related to which dental material? It is related to all the dental materials. Okay, everything has a good or bad wetting property. Now, if you are asking this question because of the mercury, because mercury is very difficult to handle because of poor wetting property. If you see, when you handle mercury, it forms little drops. It's very difficult to handle that. So that is because of poor wetting property. So there's one application of wetting property there with the mercury. Otherwise, wetting is related everywhere. Okay, if I put a drop of water on wood also, how much it spreads? That depends upon the wettability, angle between the wood and the water droplet. If I put a drop on glass there, so it is actually related to everything like this. But mainly, yeah, mercury has a very poor wetting properties. That's why its handling is difficult. Okay, Sonia, fine? Okay, so we were talking about stress. See, when stress is in the same line but in opposite direction, then it is known as tensional stress. That is stretching. Okay, then it is known as tensional stress. So these are the MCQs. So be very careful about the definitions, about the things, what actually is the tensional stress. Compare it with the compressional stress. If you compare, see these two side force, these two directions of stress, again these forces are in same line, but it's in opposite direction. Direction of this is this side and direction is this side. Okay, so when it is in opposite direction but in same line, that means it is compressional stress. Okay, if we talk about the tensional stress, see, it is again in opposite direction. One direction is when the force is in opposite direction, this, and the second is this, but the line is different. One is at the upper line, lower, second is lower line. So line is not same here. If you see, then this is shear stress, means one part of the metal will tend to slide over the other part. That is shearing. Upper part will try to slide over the lower part. That is shearing. So be very careful about this. Again, I am repeating. What is tensional? When the forces are opposite direction but in line with each other, then it stretches. खींच जाता है. अगर if you say in Hindi, खींच जाता है वो. that is tensional stress. Compressional, again in line, forces are line but opposite direction. Okay, means इसको दबा दिया है, that is compressed. Okay, and the shear, the forces are in opposite direction but not in same line. Not in same line, that's why it tends to slide over each other, and that is shearing. So if go by the statements properly, all these things are MCQs for you. Then what is strain? Expressed in change in length per unit area, then a stress is applied. So what is strain? What is the change in this? When you are applying this force, tensional strain is how much change in length is there. Suppose initially it was 100 centimeters. Because of this stress, now it is 101 centimeters. So change is 1 centimeter per 100 centimeters, right? So change per unit area, per unit length, change in length per unit length or change in area, accordingly that is strain. Okay. Fine. There are few other things which we should know. These are very important definitions. Okay. So last slide. Okay, last slide. What do you want to do from last slide? This slide, Kamal. Kamal, you are talking about this slide? You are talking about this slide, stress or strain you want me to repeat? Next, okay. Strain. Strain is expressed as change in length per unit length of the body. So when stress is applied, okay, suppose we are pulling it, okay. So because of that pull, there is change in the dimensions, right? Because of that force, that pull, there is change in dimensions. That change in dimension is strain. Okay. Change, suppose there is a 1 centimeter of wire. When we pulled it, then it becomes 1.1. So there is change of 0.1. So that 0.1 which is change in length is strain. So what is the result of that stress? Because when we are putting force, there must be change in dimensions. The change in dimensions is strain. If you pull it, there is change in length. Okay, so that is strain. Kamal, is it clear to you? Kamal, okay. So there are a few other things which we should know. So please all be little attentive. So if we draw stress strain curve, then what will happen? With some amount of stress, some strain is there, then more stress, more strain, more stress, more strain. Means more force, more change in dimension, more force, more change in dimension, something like this. If we take example of a wire, suppose a steel wire, if we tries to stretch it, pulls it, to some extent it gets pulled and it will come back to its original position. Okay. Till then stress is proportional to strain. Means you are putting a particular amount of stress and equal amount of, and some particular amount of strain is there. Further, more stress, same amount of strain. Same amount of stress, same amount of strain. No? So proportional thing. Okay. So that is the proportional limit. So if you take example of steel wire and it tries to pull it, then you try to pull it to some extent. When you are pulling it slightly, then little more harder. Okay. Kamal, is the video clear to you now? Is it clear to you? It's a little slow. Okay. If you have any problem, then you can refresh it, okay? I'll start with it, just check whether it's clear or not, okay? Fine. So, what we were talking, take example of a steel wire and pull it. When you pull it slight, it will come back to its original position when you leave it. Then you pull it little more, again it will come back to its original position. Again pull little more, again it will come back to its original position. But after some time when you pull it more, it will not come back to its original position. So the point till when it comes back to its original position is the proportional limit. That is the limit where the stress will be proportional to the strain. Okay, so it is the elastic limit also. Elastic means the material is elastic. What do you mean by elasticity? Means when you stretch it, it will come back to its normal position. That is elasticity, right? So if I talk here is the proportional limit, means if you stretch a wire or rubber, it will come back to its original position. That is the elastic limit. It's elastic till that point. It comes back to its original position. Here is the elastic limit. During this elastic part, the stress is stress is proportional to strain. So that's why this is proportional limit also. So a proportional limit as well as elastic limit. Is it clear to everyone? I want to know answer from everyone. Saili, Syed, Rashmi, Sushma. What is proportional limit? What is elastic limit? Is it clear to everyone? Both are practically same. Okay? Very good. So then let me explain you what is yield point. Okay, what is yield point? After proportional limit, if you try to stretch a wire, it will not come back to its original position. It will get deformed. That is plastic deformation. Elasticity and plasticity, it becomes plastic. Deformation means it will not come back to its original position. Okay? So that point from where it starts, that's very difficult to measure. That what's the actual point from where it is not coming back to its original position. Practically if you start doing this, it's very difficult to know that point, that from which point it has started deforming. It has started changing its dimensions. Okay. So what's the solution for that? So an offset is chosen. For example, 0.1% or 0.2% is chosen. Means that point is taken as the starting of deformation when its 0.1% is already deformed, or some is chosen, or when its 0.2% is already deformed, that point is taken as starting point of deformation, that is plastic changes. So it is little means 0.1 or 2% is already done. That point is known as the yield point. Okay, that is the yield point, and this is 0.1 or 0.2 mm more than the elastic limit. Okay, that is the yield strength. Okay, so what, everyone clear about this? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yes. So what is yield strength? It is that stress which is required to produce a fixed, which is decided already 0.1 or 0.2% deformation. That stress is known as yield strength. Okay, what is yield strength? That stress which can produce 0.1 or 0.2%, whatever is chosen or fixed already, that much deformation, that is known as yield strength. Okay, yield strength and plastic deformation is same. No, Syed, yield strength and plastic deformation, how it is related, you just try to understand that. The point from where plastic deformation begins, that point of stress is known as yield strength. Okay, that much stress is yield strength. At the point of yield strength plastic deformation begins. Okay. Sayyid, is it clear to you? Okay. So I'll just go again with this. So what is proportional limit? I'll go again to this. Maximum stress above which strain is no longer proportional to strain. So till it is proportional, it is proportional limit. Till it is elastic, it is elastic limit. When it is not, then it becomes plastic. So what is yield strength here? So yield strength is stress required to produce a particular offset that has been chosen. Okay. So we'll go to the next slide and see how much you have understood this. Can you all see this box? Yellow box? Okay. So I'll read this and it should be clear to you. Elastic limit, proportional limit and yield strength have very close values. Okay. If you see, elastic limit and proportional limit are identical. Definitely. The point in which it's elastic, the stress is proportional to strain. So elastic limit and proportional limit are same, identical. But yield strength is slightly greater because we have already considered 0.1 to 0.2% offset. Means then the deformation is already happened by 0.1% or by 2%. So it should be little higher than the proportional limit, right? So yield strength is generally greater than the proportional limit, a little greater than that because of an offset that is chosen rather than measuring slightest deviation. So because of offset which we have chosen. So if these MCQs comes, all these things, elastic limit, proportional limit and yield strength are same. The question is like, yes, it is nearly same. But if it's MCQs in framed, which has little higher value as compared to others, so it is yield strength. So approximately these three are same, but yield strength has slightly higher value. I hope this is very, very clear to you because so many MCQs are there on this. Okay, I want this to be clear to everyone, okay? So here, one thing more I like to describe, that is ultimate tensile strength. Okay, what is ultimate tensile strength? When we are pulling the wire, it is coming back to its original position. Then we are pulling the wire, it is not coming back to its original position. Its dimension is changing. When you keep on pulling, it breaks. That stress where it breaks is ultimate tensile stress. Okay. So what is ultimate tensile strength? Where it breaks, that is ultimate tensile strength. Clear what is ultimate tensile strength to everyone? Okay. So next is what is resilience. Resilience is a measure of energy. Again, it's a very important MCQ question. What is resilience? It is the amount of energy. So it is a measure of energy. How? When you stretch a wire and leave it, during stretching, how much energy it absorbs? How much energy it absorbs? That is resilience. So technical language, it is the area under elastic region of curve. So till proportional limit is the elastic limit. If you see this area till here, this area till here, this area is this much area. See the black line? Area inside this is the resilience. So this much is the energy absorbed during elastic deformation. Means when it is coming back to that. So what is the resilience? It is a measure of energy. Next is what is toughness. Toughness is another measure of energy. So it is the energy required to fracture a material, or if it is energy required to fracture a material, in other words, it is a resistance to fracture. Means till how long a material can resist its fracture, its breaking down. So this is how it is measured. It is the total area under stress strain curve. Total area means जब तक तुमने खींच के उसको तोड़ नहीं दिया, you are pulling the wire, coming back, pulling, not coming back, pulling, and finally it's broken. The whole area under the curve, that is total energy absorbed before getting fractured, that is toughness. Clear? So what is resiliency? What is toughness? Hopefully it is clear to you. Okay. There is something more called Poisson's ratio. Okay. So I'll go to the next diagram for this. This is one cylinder. See, it is a metal or it's a rubber or something. When you put any kind of stress on this, when there is a stress, here's tensile strength and toughness. Tensile strength and toughness. Okay. Ultimate tensile strength. If you talk about ultimate tensile strength, till ultimate tensile strength, the energy absorbed by the wire. Ultimate tensile strength is when, because of stretching, the wire breaks. Till that point, energy absorbed is the toughness. So it's the resistance to fracture. And how much energy absorbed before fracturing, or how much resistance it has given to fracture. So it's the same thing to say. Got it? Sonia, that's the ultimate tensile strength is the last point of the stress strain curve. उसके आगे तो break ही हो जाता है. So it means it's the total area under that curve where it breaks. If you see total elongation, total, no, so it's not same. Okay, it's not same. Definitely it's not same. Tensile strength is stress, toughness is energy. You're not getting my point, Sonia. Just try to understand what I'm saying. Tensile strength is the stress which can cause, ultimate tensile strength is stress which can cause breakage of the wire. So it is stress. During that pulling, how much energy is absorbed by that wire? That is toughness. Two things are different. Yeah, these are very much related. So, but these are not same. Okay. So, tensile strength is stress to break. Toughness is energy absorbed before breaking. Sonia, is it really clear to you? Okay. Actually, I know you really need to put your brains to understand these definitions, but these are the basics of dental materials, and afterwards so many times these properties will be used while defining the materials. Okay. So what is Poisson's ratio? When you put a stress over there, there is a strain in all the directions. Okay. Sorry, my slide is not working. Just we need to wait for a minute, I think. Okay. So there is simultaneous axial and lateral strain. Suppose we compress this cylinder. This is the original dimensions of cylinder. We compressed it. There is strain in both directions. See, there is change in length also. There is change in width also. So when a stress is applied, the strain is in both the directions. Okay, that is axial direction as well as lateral direction. This is the axial direction, this is the lateral direction. So this ratio of that change is Poisson's ratio. Syed, can you and Kamal? Yeah. Syed, can you enlarge the slide? Slide is of full size here with me, Syed. You cannot see this diagram, this cylinder. Syed, can you see this cylinder on which my pointer is moving? For you it is little small. Yeah. So it is small for others also? See, don't try to read this. Okay, don't try to read this what is written small. I'll be explaining to you. Just look at this diagram, okay, Syed? Just try to look at this cylinder. Don't try to read this what is written in. So don't try to read this, okay? So if what I am telling to this cylinder, its stress is there. Suppose this compressive stress is there. See, this is this direction, that direction. But change in dimension, that is strain. If you remember the definition of strain, that is change in dimension is in both sides. Its length is also decreasing, width is increasing. So strain is in horizontal or lateral direction as well as in axial direction, right? So final sentence which I like to give, when there is any kind of stress, the strain is in both the direction, lateral as well as. सीधी सी बात, एक सिलेंडर को कंप्रेस करोगे तो उसकी विड्थ भी चेंज होगी, इसकी लेंथ भी चेंज होगी, राइट? So that strain which is in both the direction means that is change in dimension is both the direction. The change in dimension, if you take the ratio of both, ratio of horizontal by axial, that ratio is Poisson's ratio. Okay, so ratio between change of dimensions in lateral direction and axial direction, that ratio is Poisson's ratio. Okay. So it is for ideal materials, it is 0.5. So this is something for you to remember. For isotropic materials or ideal materials, it is 0.5. Okay. So now coming to the next property, till here I wish everything is clear to everyone. Sushma, Saili, Syed, Rashmi, Kamal, I hope so it's clear to you people, right? Okay, so coming to the next property, that is fatigue failure. What do you mean by fatigue failure? If you remember in the ortho department, sometimes we break the wire, we just hold it with plier and we keep on moving the other end of wire. One is cutter, I am not talking about cutter. If you don't take your cutter to the lab, what you do? You see this diagram. Okay, you just hold the wire with the plier and keep on moving the free end of the wire, and wire breaks, right? Everyone knows this happens, right? So that is fatigue failure. Because of the repeated cycles of the stress, it breaks less than the ultimate strength. So it breaks at a value which is lesser than the ultimate. Ideally the wire should break at its ultimate tensile strength. But because of this multiple cycles of stress, one time you move, then you move second time, third time, fourth time, because of this continuous cycles of stress, it breaks lesser than the ultimate, means before reaching the ultimate tensile strength. That is fatigue failure. Means this is because of fatigue of the wire. Because you have moved the wire so much, it has broken. Okay. So that is fatigue failure. So what is static fatigue failure? And what is dynamic fatigue failure? Okay, next, okay. Static fatigue failure, when because of the repeated cycle, there is some structural flaw also. Suppose in the formation of orthodontic wire, there is some structural flaw is there. Some problem, manufacturing problem is there, and then you put continuous cycles, then it is static fatigue failure. But when it is only because of the motion, then it is dynamic fatigue failure. So fatigue failure is of two types. Static means when so many cycles of stress combined with the structural or manufacturing flaws, then it is static. When it is only because of the multiple cycles of stress, then it is dynamic. Just a minute, wait for the slide please. Okay, so coming to the next part of the property is the hardness. Okay, this is very important. So many MCQs comes on this hardness. In dental materials, half the MCQ sometimes formulated on the properties only. Okay, so hardness is again a very important property from the MCQ point of view. It's the index of the ability of a material to resist abrasion or wear. Right? To resist abrasion or wear. For example, if you rub glass with the plastic, which will get abraded? Glass or plastic? Which will get abraded? Glass or plastic? Plastic. So which is more harder? Glass or plastic? It's glass. Because glass has a higher resistance to abrasion. It will not abrade easily. So glass is more harder than plastic. So that's what I was trying to explain the definition. Okay. So coming to the different numbers, how we measure the hardness of a material. There are different methods to measure the hardness of material. And the first method is the Brinell hardness number. Brinell hardness number. So what is there used is a steel ball is loaded on a material. So you press the material with a steel ball and total area is measured. Definitely if you press it with a steel ball, some indentation will be there on the material. So what is the area of that indentation caused by the steel ball is the Brinell hardness number. Okay. Coming to the next method of measuring is the Rockwell hardness number. Here we use a ball or a conical diamond point. We press it with that diamond point and there will be again an indentation formed. But here we measure the depth of that indentation. See, here we measure this thing. That is the depth of indentation. So what's the difference? In Brinell we were measuring the area of the indentation. In Rockwell, we are measuring the depth of the indentation. Okay. Third is this loop hardness number. Loop hardness number. So we are using it a diamond indenting tool, which is rhomboid in shape. What is rhomboid? Which has two different diameters on different directions. Okay. So rhomboid in shape made up of diamond. When we cause indentation, indentation will be of this shape and we measure this longest diameter of this rhomboid indentation. From this indentation we measure the longest diameter. Okay. So longest diameter is measured in loop hardness number. Next comes the Vickers hardness number. What is Vickers hardness number? In this, it is quite similar to Brinell hardness number. In this, we use a square or a pyramid is used, and again the surface area is measured. Indenting tool is diamond in shape or a square or a pyramid, you can say, and this is the shape is obtained, and we again measure the surface area. We again also measure the surface area in Brinell hardness number. Okay. So if I like to repeat oh shit, what is going on? Okay. Sorry, repeat. Kamal, what you want me to repeat? All the numbers or some particular number? I am repeating it anyways. Okay, I am repeating it for everyone. So there are so many MCQs from this. First was the Brinell hardness number, in which there was a steel ball which we indented. We measure the area of indentation. Rockwell, the diamond point, we indent it and measure the depth of the indentation. For loop, we indent the rhomboid shaped tool, diamond tool, and we measure the diameter of the longest diameter of that rhomboid. And for Vickers, again this is a pyramid or square indentation, and we measure the area. So in Brinell and Vickers, we measure the area. Here we measure the diameter, and Rockwell we measure the depth. So is it clear to everyone? All the four numbers? Sure. What about you, Kamal? Is there any doubt, Kamal? No ma'am, it's not clear. What you have not understood? Okay, I'll repeat for you. Others can also listen to it if it's clear to others. Okay. So what is there, Kamal? If you take any hard surface and take a steel ball and put a pressure with that steel ball, so what will be there? There's an impression of steel ball on that surface. Then there's an impression of that steel ball on the surface. If we measure that area of that surface, how much indentation is there, how much impression has come, okay, that is Brinell hardness number. Then we take another solid surface and take a diamond point which is pointed like this, and we press on it. There will be indentation again, mark again, and we measure the depth of that indentation. Then it is Rockwell. Okay, then it is, we measure the depth, then it is Rockwell. Okay. The next is loops, this last one. We take a rhomboid. You know what is rhomboid? Two sides larger, two smaller. It's a rhomboid shaped tool. On a surface we press that rhomboid. So there will be rhomboid shaped impression on that surface. We measure the longest diameter, longest side of that rhomboid. See, here the longest side is here. If the mark is come like this, so there will be longest diameter. Yeah, there must be specific sizes. Definitely there must be specific sizes. I don't know whether it's mentioned somewhere how much the size, but yeah, if you see the angles are specified, definitely the sizes must be specified. I don't think it's given in any book, I'll see, but definitely should be very much specific. Okay, so that is loop. Finally, Vickers is, we take a diamond point, we press it. Okay, if squarish or pyramid impression comes, and we measure the surface of that indentation. That is Vickers. So is that all clear to you, Kamal, now? All the 4 points: Brinell hardness number, Rockwell, loop, and Vickers. Okay. What are micro hardness tests? Out of this, loop hardness and Vickers hardness are known as micro hardness tests. If this is again MCQs and commonly asked MCQ, which are the micro hardness tests? Out of these 4, loop. So this loop and Vickers, these are micro hardness tests. Why micro? Because the load applied is less than 9.8 newtons. In these two numbers, the load applied is less than 9.8 newtons. That's why it is, these are micro hardness ones. Okay. Okay, everyone. Now leave that part behind and we'll start with another property. So fresh your minds for the next property, that is color. When we take color, so many things come into mind. Which color? Yellow, red, green, whether it's dark or light, whether it's more green or less green, right? So we can actually particularly define a color. So it is defined by Minsel's color system, this one, okay? So this system describes a color in a very nice way. How it describes, it has three components, okay? One is hue. This is Minsel's color system. In this, hue is this. Means this circle is hue. So what is hue? Hue is the basic color. What is the hue of the color? Means what is the basic color? Whether it's red, whether it's yellow, whether it's green, what it is, okay? So what is hue? It is the dominant color that is around this circumference is red, green or blue. Then comes this saturation, that is chroma. Then comes this chroma. Chroma is this around the periphery. If you see from this point 0 to 12, this is blue color, right? But 2 is less blue, 4 is more blue, 8 is more blue and 12 is most blue, okay? So how much blue it is? Less blue, more blue, okay? So what is saturation or chroma? Is the amount of color per unit area. कितना रंग है, ज़्यादा blue है, कम blue है. So it is the amount of color per unit area that gives the saturation of the color. How much it is saturated with that color, okay? Then comes the last thing which is defined as the value. Value is around this central axis. So what is value here? It is about the lightness or darkness. If it is blue, it is light blue or it is a dark blue. That will be told by value. When the value is less, it is dark. As the value increases, it becomes lighter. So 0 is the darkest color and 10 if you go, it's the lightest color. So as the value increases, its value, as the color becomes light, its value increases. Okay, so that is value. Okay, so I think this should be clear to everyone. A color can be defined with three properties. So we can particularly define this is a color, means hue of the color, chroma is the saturation of the color, and the central axis is about light and dark color. Okay, a very light blue have high value or less value? You answer me this question. I'll understand whether you have understood this. It's a very light blue color. Its value should be high or less? High. Sushma Pathak high. Sayyid less. Sonia high. Why Sayyid? Why it is less? See this diagram again, Sayyid. When the color is dark, it is 0. When the color is light, it is 10. It is a very, very light blue. Its value, central property is the value here. Its value should be high. Okay. Lighter the color, value is high. Okay. So coming to the next property, that is translucency. Translucency, when there is a partial passage of color through a substance, means through an object the light passes but it's partial passage. It will not give any distinguishable image, but it will partial passage of light. Okay. So when there is a partial passage, this property is used for the matching of teeth. In the human teeth also there is a partial passage of light through the tooth. That gives a lifelike appearance to the tooth. Okay, that is known as lifelike appearance. Because of the partial penetration or passage of light through human teeth, this gives a lifelike appearance. And this we try to match in the artificial teeth. So that is translucency. Okay. Then coming to next property, that is metamerism. So what is metamerism? It is related to color again. Objects that appear to color matched in one light. So if you see under a think one light, you'll see that two objects are of same color. But when you see under another source of light, the color will start looking different. That is the property is known as metamerism. So metamerism is a property when two objects look of same color under one kind of light, but they look of different color under different second type of light. That is metamerism. Is it clear to everyone what is metamerism? Sushma, Saili, keep giving response. Okay. There's again one or two more things to know. There were MCQs on this. Biesel-Brooke effect. I think my pronunciation is right. Otherwise you can see the spelling. Biesel-Brooke effect and the color contrast. So I'll try to explain this. You try to understand, okay? Okay. Everyone can see this slide? Okay. See this upper diagram. The red around and the center is white. Blue around and center is white. Okay. You see it very clearly. Central white is looking little reddish here and central white is looking little bluish here. That is Biesel-Brooke effect. Yeah. The Biesel-Brooke effect. Why? What is this? This central white is little reddish. This is blue. Why? It tends to take a hue from the outside. Because the surrounding is red, this white is also giving a little reddish appearance. It tends to take the color of surrounding, tends to take the hue of the surrounding. Okay, this blue, white is looking light bluish, little bit bluish because of the surrounding blue. Okay, other slide. Okay, I'll just try. Everyone can see the slide, please. Okay, fine. Good. Okay, so I'll try to explain again this Biesel effect. That is, although the central part is white, because of the surrounding is red, it tends to be little reddish. The central part is white, because the surrounding is blue, it tends to look little bluish. So this tries to take the color of the surrounding. देखो तो ये पूरा रेड व्हाइट नहीं लगता, थोड़ा रेडिश लगता है. So that is the Biesel effect. Okay, if I am pronouncing it right. Otherwise I'll show you the spellings. Okay. Then what is color contrast? Color contrast is this Biesel effect is also known as color assimilation. The second name is color assimilation. Color assimilation and Biesel effect is same. Okay. Then next property is color contrast. Color contrast is opposite to color assimilation. See this yellow area here. Now it is lesser yellow, but when red comes, the yellow starts looking more yellow. See the difference between green and red. Green, this yellow is less yellow, but when red comes, this yellow looks more yellow. Okay, so when it is seen in presence of a complementary color, it starts looking more yellow. Red is the complementary color for yellow. In the presence of its complementary color, it starts looking more yellow, means it pushes it more towards yellow. Okay, so that is color contrast. Okay, so what is the use for this? Usually it is said to the operator, you look at the complementary color before looking to the teeth. So if you want to know how much teeth are yellow, first look at something red, then you look at teeth. You'll come to know how yellow it is. So that lets your eyes. Okay, so that is color contrast. So what is color assimilation, what is color contrast should be clear to you. Then just a minute, Rashmi. Rashmi, can you see the slide now? You want me to repeat what? Rashmi, what do you want me to repeat? पहले वाला, और डायग्राम वाला, इसके पहले वाला. Okay, fine. Okay, this we want to know. Von Bezold effect or Bezold-Brooke effect. It's not Brooke-Bezold. It's a Bezold-Brooke effect and the color assimilation. Color contrast takes the hue of the surrounding color, whereas color contrast moves in the direction of the complementary color. So it moves more towards its complementary color, right? You read this slide. Is it okay? Fine. Now coming to the next property, that is thermal conductivity. Thermal conductivity is the measurement of heat flow through a material. Okay, definitely thermal is heat. So heat flow through a material is thermal conductivity. So heat flow is proportional to what? To surface area. If the surface area is more the heat flow. Secondly, it is proportional to the temperature gradient. If the difference between the two temperatures of two surfaces is more is the heat flow. So heat flow is proportional to surface area as well as heat gradient. Temperature gradient. Okay. What is important is the coefficient of thermal expansion. Change in length per unit length of original when temperature is raised by 1 degree. When you raise the temperature of a matter, there is slight expansion of that matter. There is a very slight expansion of that matter. How much expansion is there? That is coefficient of thermal expansion. Suppose you raise the temperature of a wood by 1 degree. Slightly wood will expand. Same, you take a piece of metal. Okay, suppose copper. You raise the temperature by 1 degree. Slight change is there. But copper will expand more than wood. So thermal coefficient of copper is more than wood. Okay. So it is a change in length per unit of the original length. Others, there are others, Saili, Sayyad, Rashmi, Sushma, Kamal, trial users. I don't know the names, but still all the trial users also. Okay. So why this thermal expansion is important, coefficient of thermal expansion? Why it is important? Because the restorative materials which we put in the tooth or which we put in the teeth, it should have a very close thermal coefficient to the tooth. Otherwise, if the tooth will expand less or more than that, the bond between restorative material and the tooth will break and there will be marginal leakage. So MCQs comes on this. First we'll talk about this. If you see for the tooth enamel, it is 11.4. Means it expands more. Dentine, it is 8.3. Means dentine expands less than enamel when temperature is changed by 1 degree. Porcelain, it is very close to dentine. So usually MCQs come, porcelain has a coefficient, which material has a thermal expansion coefficient close to dentine? That is porcelain. It's very close to dentine, see 8.3, 6.3. Amalgam, definitely silver. More, it is more. So it is 25. Resins has again more. And if you say all the waxes which we use has a 400, means expands a lot on heating. Okay. So this comparison you should know which has a closer to dentine, which is less. So what is the sequence? Porcelain more close, dental followed by amalgam, followed by resins and inlays. So all these you should know for the MCQ property. So coming to the next property, biocompatibility. I'll not go in much detail of the biocompatibility. So when the material is prepared or some drug is prepared, it should be biocompatible, right? So there are different groups. Group 1, we check the cytotoxic and genotoxic evaluation. Means on a cell line, we check whether there is any cytotoxicity this product can cause, or genotoxic whether it can cause any mutation. That is checked in the primary test or group 1 test. What is group 2? We check whether it can cause any systemic toxicity. Okay. Systemic toxicity to the person. Okay. That is checked in group 2. Group 3 is a preclinical usage test. Means this is done, used in volunteers and other side effects, its behavior, its serum concentration, all these things are checked. And further, group 4, actually the usage in the public and seen the long-term effects after 10-year use in the public. What are the effects? Like that. So group 1 is basic cytotoxicity on cell line, genotoxicity mutation. Group 2, systemic toxicity 3 on volunteers, and 4 is in the public. So what is negative control? When a drug is tested, it is usually compared with the standard. For example, if something to be used on pulp, zinc oxide eugenol is already a set standard. We need to compare that new product with zinc oxide eugenol. So that is the negative control of it. Pulp capping and pulpotomy. For pulp, if there is new drug used for pulp capping and pulpotomy, we need to compare with calcium hydroxide, because calcium hydroxide is already a good set standard for that. So that drug need to be compared with calcium hydroxide. Endodontic zinc oxide eugenol for endodontic purposes. So these are negative controls for this. Okay. So that's all about physical properties. I think we all need a break after the physical properties, right? I think it's all clear to you, all the trial users, and Kamal, Sushma, Saili, Syed, Rashmi. Here, Sonia. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, then I'll come back to you. Okay?